What's going on in the Edmonton real estate market?
I think it's the calm before the storm. Looking at, again, the economic fundamentals that drive a real estate market, it seems like the moons are aligning. And
Hey, Jason Mattern. How you doing, my friend? Welcome to today's show. Long time no see, my friend, first of all.
Yes. Hey, Rusty. Always good to see you. Always good to see you, my friend.
I know the last time we did one of these ones, I was out in Edmonton and I had to don the furry cap, and we were out in the frozen tundra. So I know this is now spring, and are things melting out in Edmonton again?
Yeah, we're on our way, Russ. It's typical Edmonton, Alberta weather. We're probably sitting around 0 right now. I think we're going to see about 8 degrees today. So it's starting, but you know what? We're probably, for all intents and purposes, still winter here. The ground's covered in white yet, but hey, it's just nature of the beast in Edmonton.
Yeah, it's that time of year where you find out all the windshield cracks that you had over the winter, and it's the time of year where you go through more windshield washer fluid than you go gasoline, don't you?
It's definitely car wash season. Yeah, it's definitely car wash season. But more importantly than that, there's just some really good spring activities going on in Edmonton. And I don't know where you're at. You guys are obviously much further ahead in the seasons than we are, but things like the Boat and Sportsman show and the Home and Garden show and the renovation show are all happening in Edmonton at this time. And it's really, now that the warmer weather coming upon us, it's really starting to put some excitement in the air for that spring real estate market coming again, right? We're feeling it already.
Yeah. And we shot a video a long time ago. It was back when we didn't actually know what we were doing. And we talked about this is the time of year. It's like, late winter, late February, early March, when that first winter Chinook starts rolling through and everybody starts thinking about real estate again. And that's the time to whether you're selling or buying, that's when activity starts happening out in Edmonton. Are you seeing that again this year?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. As we've been working with a lot of our sellers already that, engaged and we're looking to sell already last fall. And we're saying, okay, hold it. We want to hit the market timing. And that timing is obviously while attitudes and that mental shift is happening into spring and people thinking about buying and selling, but also before the inventory hits, because it's just normal activity in Edmonton. We see listings climb always in April and May when the snow is melted and people can go out and touch up the yards and paint the house and get everything ready, and preferably we like to get in before that because it's just more of a competitive environment.
Yep.
Less competition, right?
Yep. Now, I know you and I have a long list of a laundry list and a punch list here of things to dump into of a conversation for the YouTube and for our podcast as well. But before we do, I always like to take a little bit of time with some personal. You had just recently, your son just won a fairly prestigious hockey tournament just recently out in Penticton. So I know you're a very proud papa of both your children, but young Harry just did accomplish something pretty amazing. So maybe just share with everybody what happened.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, and thanks for that, Russ. It's his team won the CSSHL championship, the Western Canadian Championship, for U15 division, and you know what? I think it's like anything else. He's 13 years old, and just the business side of hockey is starting to kick in, and that responsibility and everything that's going. So, as a dad, and his parents, we couldn't be more proud of him and his team and their accomplishments. But it just happens quick. It's, the world has changed since you and I were kids, right? And, we're seeing this now relaying into our kids' lives. But you know what? We're lucky we engaged in real estate many years ago and have the fortunate ability to go and take that stuff in. We were out there all week. The weather wasn't so kind to us. It wasn't great weather, but that's okay. It's just nice to go and watch and tag along, right?
Yeah, it was nice to to have the freedom to be able to take a week to be there with your son every step of the way, and big hug and big fist bumps after every game and all that kind of stuff. It was awesome. And I'll tell you, I went out there and Karine and I went out and watched a few games too. Is holy moly, these kids are 13 and they're like 6'1", 190 pounds, and they just lean on these sticks and roof shots. Like I couldn't do that today, even if I even thought about it.
Well, it's crazy. Yeah, I don't know what the heck they're putting in the food nowadays, but it's crazy how big these kids are. And you know what? Again, I told you this in person, and I'll tell you again. It's really appreciated when anytime we can spend it with you, Russ. It's always good. And you know what? Time in a hockey rink, shaking our cowbells and high-fiving one another. It was absolutely awesome. Yeah.
No, it was about as Canadian as you can get. Where between that and having a beer and clam after all the victories and celebration and stuff like that, it was pretty fun. Crane and I just had a big giant smile on our face after we went home, and we can't wait for the next one. And next year, maybe there'll be a national championship we're heading out to. So.
Yeah, who knows? We'll see what transpires.
All right. Well, the task at hand here, we could literally, so we've covered the weather, we've covered hockey, and the other thing that all Canadians always want to talk about is real estate. So weather, hockey, and real estate, we're doing the trifecta of a conversation here today. So before we dive into some of the things and some of the conversations that you're having, if somebody just would pick up the phone and we're talking and say, what's going on in the Edmonton real estate market? Do you have a quick, under 90-second little summary of what you would say, what's going on out in Edmonton?
I think it's the calm before the storm. Looking at, again, the economic fundamentals that drive a real estate market, it seems like the moons are aligning. And don't get me wrong, we're in a very turbulent, I think, situation still. But you know what? Real estate, if we're going to own it long term, not many people buy real estate to sell it next year. If you're going to own it long term and it's part of a long term wealth creation plan, a retirement plan, you're going to have to weather some storms. But really the amount of influx of people, the population growing, again, the jobs that are coming here, and then again, comparatively looking at average home price, average household income, all these types of things to other major metropolitan centers, there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to see significant growth in the Edmonton area over the next few years.
Yeah, and I know in the past we've used the term as this is kind of like a breather, a little bit of a window of a breather. And gang, so just as an FYI, for some context, if this is the first episode you've ever listened to, you're hearing from two people with almost 50 years experience investing in real estate, and we're going to share some of the biggest mistakes we've made. And maybe a better word would be is we're seeing history repeat itself with similar new people coming in or making the exact same mistakes that we made 20 some years ago with things. And what we're here to do is our intention is to help steer the ship and help steer a lot of investors in the right direction, learning from the painful lessons that we've had. So does that sound like a good plan for you, Jay?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just sharing knowledge for us, really. It's giving back. Like I said, real estate's been super kind to me and my family, and it's giving back, and it's just sharing that knowledge and smoothing out those bumps for other people so they can have the same thing, right?
Yeah. And I'll be and I'll maybe go first, and this can be the conversation starters. One of the biggest mistakes I have now that I've made, now that I look back upon and reflect back upon it, is, real estate markets do go in cycles. They do go in waves, right? And I know nobody will ever predict the top or ever predict the bottom or any of that kind of stuff. You'll never perfectly predict it. But you can see things happening, right? Meaning you can see when people get overly optimistic or too much greed in the marketplace, or you can see when there's too much fear in the marketplace, right? You can get a sense for that. And one of the biggest mistakes I made was I bought way too much property when there was a big giant greed at a top, and I didn't buy enough when there was fear in the market, and vice versa. I sold when there was fear and I bought when there was greed, right? So I made the exact wrong timing of the market out there right now. So what are you seeing from people that are coming through your office that are looking at real estate? What are some of the mistakes that people are making right now, Jay?
Well, I think, there's a broad question, and I think.
Well, let's pick one at a time, and it could be 100%. Yeah, no, it'll be 100% based upon what you and I have made that we've made as mistakes first and foremost.
Yeah, and as you alluded to, mistakes that we're seeing repeated now. By other investors, and buying on the right side of a real estate cycle. is going to make things so much easier for anyone to get to the finish line, wherever that is for them. It's up to them to determine, like I say, if it's income replacement or how many years down the road they want the benefit of real estate to kick in. But, again, I bought properties too in 2007. I still own them today. And let me tell you, properties that I bought after in 2010, 11, and 12, when things were cooled back down and cash flow was back in line and interest rates, were a little bit more friendly, are obviously performing well. We had gone through the up of the real estate cycle, and even, building on that, properties that we bought previous to that, pre 2005, say 2006, it just, it absolutely supercharged things going through an economic boom and a booming real estate environment. Buying, and you've used this term before, Russ. I mean, it's time and market and, market timing, I guess. They're two different stories, I guess. And if you're going to buy a property at any time and planned on holding on to it for 30 years and paying the mortgage off, it's going to work. Most people don't have the patience or the ability to wait 30 years. It's not part of their plan, and we're looking to accelerate this. So where we're at now, and the good news with real estate is, no one can predict it. There's, in full disclosure, right? But my batteries didn't even run out in my magic wand. The magic wand is broke many years ago, right? But really looking with real estate, you can see, again, these fundamentals build over time. And you know what? We watched it in the Vancouver area. We watched it in the GTA, starting 10 years ago. And we're seeing those same economic fundamentals starting to build on this side now. And you can't really, because everyone looks, and here's probably one of the biggest mistakes. And I'll refer to our friends out in the Vancouver and Toronto area, because a lot of the media is very centric around those markets. But everyone looks and they look at, what's the Canadian real estate market doing? A lot of the statistics that we see from, CMHC or CREA, the Canadian Real Estate Association, are all based on Canadian real estate market results. And, I always tell people that's like asking people what the weather's like in Canada. It doesn't work like that. Each market has its own fundamentals, and, we need to, and it shifts. Like I say, we've seen it through different metropolitan cities. We're seeing it come into Alberta now, and we need to really understand the fundamentals of that specific market that you're looking to invest in.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And gang is, like let's take an example. Here's an example. Is everybody will sit there and look at Toronto and Vancouver, and literally when you factor in those two large real estate markets into a national number, they extremely skew the national number. Like and I don't know the exact number. Like I've tried to find it, but I remember way back in the day, it was something like almost like 50% of the number was based upon those two markets, was based upon that.
Right.
So you sit there and everybody's going, well, if Vancouver is down and Toronto's down, the whole market's down while real estate is down. But if you sit there and you look at a place like Calgary or even Edmonton, and in Alberta, it's holding its own. It's like an island in all of itself, if you really dive into it, or especially if you actually dive into the affordability of houses. If you actually look at a graph of affordability of houses, you're seeing that Edmonton and Calgary are so far below their trend affordability lines that they have, multiple years of growth just to get back to a trend line before they have to start overperforming, which I believe they will start overperforming very shortly. So the question I ask people is, do you want to get on the side of it before it happens, or do you want to be on the side after it happens and it's on the way down? Okay. So go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was going to say that's hard. That's really, really hard for a lot of people to dive in and take that first step. When people are, I don't want to say running for the hills, but right now people aren't running for the hills and are not diving in. Everyone's just kind of sitting back watching. And you know what? I think that was the right move a year ago, as we're going into the higher interest rate environment. But, right now, and again, where we're at today in, late March, what happened with the financial institution south of the border, it is having some ripple effect with bond yield markets and potentially fixed rate mortgages. So we'll see where that goes. But a lot of the big questions, I think, is it now the time to invest? Should they be investing now? Or should they be waiting a year or two for rents to continue to rise and interest rates to lower down? And I've got, I guess an opinion on that. And it's not even opinion. It's just really taking and looking at the black and the white of it and the facts to determine if which decision is best for each investor individually.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect segue as to let's open that door and let's have that conversation. So if somebody came to you, Jay, and they are sitting there and going, okay, they sit there, and this is usually the way some of the conversations go. Okay, I've seen some videos, I've watched some stuff, I like what I see in Alberta, it makes sense. I like the population trends, I like the GDP trends, I like all that information that's going in. Heck, what was two quick stats that I just recently saw, and one was you can rent a 3-bedroom apartment in Alberta for $500 cheaper than a 1-bedroom apartment in Ontario. Like, think about that. You're getting 3 times the bedrooms for $500 cheaper, right? On that as well. And the other one that I saw was the amount of population that is coming to the province of Alberta is even faster than what the predictions I had been seeing. And I'm going to use a Calgary number here for a second. Calgary saw 52,000 people move to Calgary in the last 12 months of the year. Now, to put that in perspective, 52,000 would be like a Vernon, the city of Vernon, or the city if you're out in Ontario, the city of Orillia, or is it Cornwall? Maybe Cornwall. Like, think about that for a second. A city of Vernon was added to Calgary in the last 12 months. So you wonder why the listings are low, prices are high, and rents, like I'm hearing from landlords that they're getting 30, 40 calls and applications on every property they come out. Now, that's Calgary. It's not happening in Edmonton yet, but I believe it's coming. What's your take on that, Jay?
Well, Russ, if you look back through history, Calgary is always ahead of us in that cycle. And I don't understand why. I can't explain why. It just always is. When we went back, and what I can share with you factually, going back in our last real estate boom in 2006, 7, and 8, Calgary was ahead of us, and they are again. And that stuff is starting to trickle into Edmonton now, where we're seeing our rental market, just really a shortage of good rental properties. Population is growing here. On the flip side to that, there's also, in a higher interest rate environment, it's harder to qualify for a mortgage. And we did just see an announcement here a few weeks back that OSFI, the Office for the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, they're the regulating body for Canadian financial institutions, are looking to tighten mortgage restrictions even further. So yes, that's spooky on the front lines for mom and dad homebuyer wanting to buy a house. Many people that are right on a cusp today are not going to be able to buy. So what do you think those people are going to have to do? So us as real estate investors and landlords, it's really a good thing long term for us. Yes, it's going to be harder qualifying for mortgages, but those people that are willing to qualify or can qualify and willing to get into the marketplace are going to have even more customers to choose from. Yeah. And as a result, Russ, just like it's happening in Calgary, we're already seeing our rental market, the numbers we're seeing, our rental market increases. And I don't think that's going to be a short-term problem. I think this is, based again on population statistics and the demand from both sides of not only growing population, but people that would have been home buyers that can't now. It's just really putting unprecedented demand on the rental market here in Alberta.
I agree. And we can open, and I'm going to make a note for us to circle back to this, but if you start overlaying that maybe over the past year, a lot of new home builders have not been bringing on new inventory, or new land positions have not been coming because the interest rates have been going up. Once a lot of that inventory gets chewed up, there could be a year, 18-month gap there where there's going to be a very big shortage of inventory out in the marketplace. And when we open that door, is that something you're seeing as well, Jay?
Yeah, 100%, Russ. So and just giving you a little bit more, stretching out a little bit more and a little bit more context, it really starts with land developers because when builders are building and selling like they were, 18 months ago, and then what happened last March, we started seeing the interest rates starting to rise. So at that time, the builders reeled back, and what happened as a result, they weren't buying new, lot inventory. So the developers stopped developing. Now there's a little bit of a chain reaction there because that inventory that was to be developed last year did not get developed. So that's going to happen this year. So now, as you alluded to, the builders were going gangbusters, and now what's happening is we see that inventory coming to a really, really tight position until there's more developed land. But if you look at the timeline to do this, they're not going to start this until the thaw is out of the ground is thawed here. The most efficiently, we're probably going to see new lots hitting the front lines probably by the end of July, August, September, and then doing the math from there, another 10 months to build. So now, yes, you're going to be in a situation where it's going to be 18 months to get a new home to the front lines. If you look at what this is going to do to our market at the time where we've got, again, getting into record low inventory in our MLS inventory, the builder inventory is being swallowed up with no new stuff sitting in behind it. Again, it's just the old supply demand economics where it's going to probably drive up our real estate prices in Edmonton.
Yeah. And that was almost the exact same call you and I made. And I think we can even go back to the videos back in, I think it was in 2020, late 2020 or early 2021. We made the call that a lot of the inventory is going to be dried up. It's going to be sucked up, and there's going to be a little bit of a boom and spike. And then I believe it would have kept continuing. It would have kept continuing in Edmonton, but we had an interest rate that curbed the enthusiasm off the market. But I think what that's just done is it's given us another window to buy now while everybody's taking a little breather. And there's a little bit of fear in the marketplace out there right now. Now, I know.
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead there, Jay, please.
Well, I was just going to say, and on the flip side to that, what builders do and developers do when we get into these, tight inventory environments, they raise prices. And I'm not saying that's wrong or right. It's an open competitive market, but at the end of the day, when we're looking at acquiring a property into our portfolio as an investor, again, this is what we really need to determine. Is it going to make sense to buy now, or is it going to make sense to wait? So there's two sides to that story for sure, because the reality is we are in a higher interest rate environment today. And as a result, the cash flow is not as pretty as it was when we had 1.79% 5-year fixed money. Yep. Right? So we need to look at those numbers and analyze that. And if it's break even or slightly negative or slightly positive, we need to look at that and buying at a lower acquisition price today versus if we wait a year, that makes sense. If that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. However, I think it's going to come at a cost because yes, the interest rate will be lower, the rents will be up, which will inherently make cash flow on pro formas look better. However, I think you're going to pay more money for that asset. I think undoubtedly. And I think you're also going to miss out on a year or two of mortgage principal reduction, from a tenant.
Yep. Well, let's unpack that here in a second. But before we unpack that, I'm just going to share one quick stat here as well. And now, this is not a guarantee, but the last time we saw population number growth like this in Alberta, the housing market, the housing price doubled. Just as an FYI, gang, if you want to look back in time and look back at that. Now, by 100%, I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but I'm a firm believer that housing markets are people dependent. If you have people that are moving in, people that are working, it's affordable for people to spend more money on the economy. You have economic churn, you have people working, you have jobs, you have production happening. That is good for the psyche of a economy, which is good for the real estate market. So compare some of the fundamentals that are happening in Alberta versus other fundamentals. And you will, honestly, I'm sorry, we may be preaching to the choir here a little bit, but gang, this is that window of opportunity to potentially pick up a good property in Alberta at the moment. Okay, so I'll get off my soapbox for a second. Now we're going to pivot to the conversation here about buy now or wait. And this is one of those ones that we have all the time. Like, this is probably the conversation that you almost have to hit on repeat for the people you have with people. Yeah. And a lot of people are coming in and they're going, makes sense. They look at a pro forma and then all of a sudden they see, it's negative $140. Well, I can't buy that. So how do you have that conversation with people?
Well, I think it's a reality. And like I said, when you look at this, so I guess one of the questions I'll ask, and Russ, maybe I can ask your opinion on it, is how long is it going to take for our markets to stabilize again? Question mark. And I'll give my less than 30-second opinion on that. I think it's going to take some time. I know we are seeing, rumblings already that the Bank of Canada is going to start reducing rates this summer. I seen this article yesterday. I think it's going to take a little time. I think it could take upwards of 18 to 24 months to, stabilize and get rates back down into a normal environment while our rental rates continue to rise. So if we take on average a 2-year cycle for this to happen, and our negative cash flow is $100 a month, that's $2,400 in support payments we have to put in additionally into our investment. Yeah, that's not, a typical viable. We always buy for cash flow, Russ, right? We always buy for cash flow. But I think this is just one of those circumstances, where, we need to look at the other side and make sure we understand that too. Because like I said, if you're buying and you can save, and I can share with you that the prices that we're seeing from our builder groups coming on newly tendered properties are on average about $15,000 up across the board, right? So we're seeing if you're looking at a suite at home or a grad suite, they're anywhere, I would say, from 50 to 30,000, depending on area. So again, if you can save that money in acquisition cost, and then you look at what's the market going to appreciate over the next couple of years. Now, no one knows that, but if we're to look, and let's just use a suite at home as an example. Okay. So roughly estimated purchase price. And when I quote this number, it's all in. So it's going to include landscaping and window coverings and everything that we need to put tenants in place. We're going to be in that 550,000 range. Okay. So if the market appreciates 3% per year for the next 3 years, that property value is going to be worth $601,000, right? If the market goes upwards of 5%, that property is going to be worth roughly $637,000. So you look at the appreciation value that we're getting there, and also look at the mortgage principal reduction over that same 3-year period. There is over $100,000 of equity there up for grabs. And the only way to really access that is to get your name on a title and get, the wheels in motion. Because past a 3-year period, I think, we're probably potentially could be in a much different, investing environment where rates have stabilized, back down into the 3 to 4% range. I don't know if we're ever going to see the 1.79% fixed money. I doubt it. If it does, it could take years. But I also don't feel everything, the economy can sustain where we're at today because of some of the, things we're seeing on the front lines with foreclosures and defaults already starting to happen. So, and then again, what we talked about earlier with our rental rates continuing to rise, when you look at an analysis 3 years down the road, you could be in a pretty juicy cash flow environment. So again, when you look at all that, the question is it worth supporting a property for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 of negative cash flow? And you know what? I just have to say, we've got super creative with our developers and our builders, and we have ways of actually eliminating that risk as well for a couple year period. But at the end of the day, if it is negative cash flow, is it worth, again, let's use $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to capture that $100,000, by the end of the 3rd year via mortgage principal reduction and capital appreciation, and by buying at a little bit lower acquisition price today.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Yeah, 100%. And now I would answer that in a couple ways. I would be very hesitant to buy a property like that in a marketplace that would be at a top of a market, and that would be at a top of a rental affordability. And sorry, I didn't mean to use that finger, sorry. The rental affordability, maybe that was a Freudian slip. And then in a market that you can't raise your rents based upon rent controls. I would be very leery about investing in a market like that. However, I would be extremely bullish about investing in a marketplace that's at a bottom of a cycle, that has an opportunity for affordability, has lots of room for rents to go up, and also does not have rent controls on the top end as well. So I would be that's in my opinion, that's savvy investing. You're buying at a bottom and you're riding it up, as opposed to buying at the top and riding it down, right? So I had a couple things. there's a couple things I made some notes on. Number one was, okay, so right now, and we're just being honest and real, if you were to take a look at a property in Edmonton, by and large, most of them would be break even, a little bit of positive cash flow, but the majority of them are probably negative cash flow. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think you're going to be break even, give or take $100, depending on that asset class and the property type. But, taking again today's, interest rate environment and looking at, the management fees and the repairs and maintenance and the vacancy and adding that all up, you're going to be, right around that break even for sure.
Yeah. Well, now I actually just remembered what I was about to appoint. I did have a point I was going to get to. So gang, it's just been one of those mornings. Have you ever had one of those mornings where I've been up since 5:22 and I have not stopped for the whole day? It's just one of those days. So the elephant's not going all the way to the top, if you get my message. So, okay, so here was the point I was trying to get. And it was about interest rates, what you talked about. So we were at emergency low rates in the 1.5% range, like ridiculous, like that unsustainable. The Bank of Canada and everything got shocked up to 6%, right? Which we can argue if that was the right or wrong way to do it, happened, right? It is what it is. So now, if they now get into, say, a normal rate of like 4 range, everybody's going, okay, maybe that's, it's not 6, right? And we can live with that. And now that's the new normal, is to try to get it into that range. Sometimes they have to go too far to come back to what is the new standard that everybody wants to get into. And I have a feeling we're going to start seeing interest rates in that high 3s, mid 4s ongoing go forward from here. So, and I bought hundreds of places at those interest rates, by the way.
Well, and like I say, this isn't a new environment. We went back, wind the clock back to June of 2008. That was at the top of the cycle, but we were at a 6.25% prime rate at that time, and people were lining up to buy negative cash flow real estate, just like they were in Toronto a year and a half ago in Vancouver, right? Yep. But
yeah, the only difference at that time was they were 6 to 6.25%. But they were like 75 basis points to 100 basis points off prime. So we were getting things in like a 5.25 to 5.50 range at that time. And man,
don't forget we had 40-year amortizations back then too, right?
Don't get me wrong, that was a stupid thing to do too, right? 15 years later, and you sit there and go, oh, mortgage pay down. That's it? I could buy a Starbucks with that. Right?
Yeah.
All right, so the next conversation that I want to have with that same vein is, was that you're doing some really cool, innovative strategies for clients to help them, for lack of a better term, ride out the negative cash flow for the next 2 years in order for market appreciation, in order for mortgage pay down, and also rental appreciation at the same time. What are some of the things that you're doing to help clients buy in Edmonton right now, Jay?
Well, Russ, we have to, because when you look at a pro forma, everyone's looking at cash flow, and I'm not going to discount that. You're crazy not to look at the cash flow, but there's also things in a pro forma that we can either delay or prepay, if you will, and remove those numbers out just to stabilize cash flow for the short term. Because again, the question is how long is this high interest rate environment going to last? Because we look at, an investment long term, or the variables that will contribute to that. It's obviously cash flow, it's obviously mortgage principal reduction, and then we've got capital appreciation. The cash flow, I think, is more from an operating side for people, just to not only have peace of mind, but if you're putting money in, it just makes sense that you want to start getting some money back out. And cash flow is one of those ways that we get, I'll use the term instant gratification. A lot of times we don't know where values are at, or we get our mortgage statements once a year. So it's really hard. Hey, the day we get our mortgage statements, that's a little bit to celebrate that day. But throughout the years, people really don't know what the value of that real estate is doing. if it's trending up and how much it's trending up, but getting that cash flow in your bank account every month is just really a nice feeling versus the opposite, of having to, throw some money at it to support it. So we're all trying to avoid that. So again, it's just getting creative with sellers and our builder groups to really, eliminate some of the things out of the pro forma, really just cutting to the chase that we can either delay and buy ourselves a couple of years to let this storm cool back down. But like I said earlier, Russ, this, anyone that's looking at buying real estate, I guess just being completely frank, it's not a passive investment. You're going to have a little hands on here, and you're going to have to manage your manager and, manage the situation. And, we can streamline that again by getting you introduced into the right professionals that really are working hard for you, and understanding where you're going with this and what you want out of this. But at the end of the day, like I say, it's, something we're going to have to, owning real estate, deal with long term. We're going to have to weather the odd storm. So anyone looking to buy, be prepared to have to put some time and effort into it. And it keeps some margin. When I say margin, I mean keep some cash and keep some available time off to the side to manage this stuff and to weather storms. Yeah,
I agree. And gang, it's difficult. This journey of real estate investing is truly, it's not easy. And, I often find people that have just got into real estate investing over the last 5 years, they sit there and they saw what the market has done in the last 5 years. That's not a normal market, gang. That is not normal. That is extraordinary measures. That is ridiculous. And quite honestly, that probably caused more problems than it caused benefits to people as well at the same time. A real estate market should move fairly slow. It should be that turtle in fifth gear. It should take time. It should grow based upon inflation numbers. It's something that, it shouldn't be exciting if you the market, right? So just slow it down a little bit, gang, right now. And right now is a window that you potentially can pick up some really good, nice properties at the moment. Can you not, Jay?
Well, and I think, so the answer to that is yes. But I think really, we're probably coming at this from the context or direction of long-term buy and hold, more so than anything else. But I think really, if anyone picks up the phone and they want to have a conversation with me, one of the very first things I'm going to ask you is, where does real estate fit? Why are you doing this? Real estate, I think, is a vehicle that we are choosing to use to get to a future financial state, just like buying a stock or a bond or anything else, right? So it's important that, you, and if we're going to help you and be part of your team, that we understand, where this fits. Again, is it part of a long-term wealth creation plan? Are you looking to retire off this income in 13 years' time? Or are you looking to just ride the market up, and sell it in 5 years' time, or get to 80% if we can gauge that and then dispose of it? Each one of those have a little bit different probably plan and probably a little bit different property type that we should be looking at. So I think that's really question number one, is establishing where real estate fits with people. It's, investing in real estate is a very broad term. It's like buying a car, or buying a vehicle. Okay, well, do you need a 1 ton, a half ton, a car, an SUV, right? This is different too, right?
And again, once we understand that, always goes to a truck first, don't they? Huh?
I started with the 1 ton.
Yeah, right. Well, Jay, how about my Tesla? Which I don't have, by the way. It's just an FYI.
Well, I was going to say, you notice I didn't mention an electric vehicle, but that's a whole other story. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then I guess, Russ, once you understand that, you can really put the pieces of the puzzle together to actually help people get what they want from this. And I think this is circling right back to the beginning of our conversation here is, one of the mistakes we're seeing people chime into is not really understanding what they're trying to get out of this. They're looking at, the popularity and the extravaganza of owning real estate. And yeah, you know what? You can make some really, really good money with real estate, but it does come with some responsibility. And I think it's important for people to understand that, because again, once you understand that, you can really reverse engineer a plan to to make people get what they want, because we see so many people come in and buy real estate, not understand that. And guess what happens in a year or two? They get stuck with big repair bills, or they get stuck with a dopey tenant, turnover situation, and it spooks them, and then all of a sudden they're on the phone. Jay, you know what? I think we need to sell that property. I'm having some tenant issues or management issues or whatever, and it's because they didn't really, start with where they're headed. If you're driving to Argentina, Russ, we can do that from here. From Edmonton, we can drive to Argentina, but it's going to take a little while, and we need to understand the plan of how the heck we're going to get there. And it's the same with a real estate journey: is know where you're headed, people, and let's cater a plan to make sure you get what you want out of it.
Yeah, I agree. And at the same time, gang, if you're interested in just buying cheap properties in a market, heck, Jay, I could show people properties that are under $100,000 in Edmonton that might even rent for like $900 to $1,100, and on pro forma paper, wow, they look fantastic. Look at that. As a matter of fact, I had a chuckle yesterday. It was a chuckle, but it was also a little bit of a, oh dear. I saw a good friend of ours who's a realtor, and good for them. They sold a property in Edmonton, and they posted that a property they sold, and I recognized the property and I recognized the building. And I just sat there. My comment was, oh, darn. I feel sorry for that person that just bought that. So, but who knows? I hope that person that bought, I'm not putting any shade or any negativity on that person. I bought 9 places in that complex, and man, did I learn the lesson the hard way. And because I bought them is because they were cheap. They were $80,000 to $122,000 a door, and we're getting $1,100 rent. And then during the peak of everything, we were up to almost $1,500 rent. And it was just fantastic during that time. But at the same time, it was just a bad area that attracted bad tenants. And when the market turned, those bad tenants stayed, and the rents had to keep going down, and it was just a slippery slope, like it truly is. So one of the things that you're famous about sharing with people is the 3 pillars of real estate. Maybe just share this with everybody in an update video here. What are the 3 pillars of real estate that are important for you, Jay?
Well, what you buy, where you buy it, and most importantly, who you put in it. And it's probably not the typical process that investors engage in. People, typically the common process is to, find a realtor, get on a drip list and get a bunch of listings sent, and then look at a pro forma and then submit an offer based on a pro forma. And I'm not saying that's wrong. We're absolutely going to look at pro formas, but there's so many variables outside of pro forma, or that can affect that pro forma long term on your financial statement, right? So things like, management costs, your repairs and maintenance, your tenant turnover, and your vacancy costs. Those are the 3 big ones, Russ. So instead of trying to find a property, what we do is we start on a complete opposite end, because like I said a few moments ago, who you put in it, to me, is most important. And ask me why if we ever get a chance to connect on the phone. Yeah, you and understanding who you're. You
and I had a lot more hair follicles back in the day when we first started this too, right? That's what bad tenants will do to you, by the way.
Well, and again, it's just really, you have an opportunity to select your customer, the tenant profile that you're because you're signing up when you're buying real estate. You're signing up to a relationship, right, with a tenant, or many tenants throughout your term of ownership. And really, you need to probably be a little selective with that and make sure you're actually doing business with a person or that you want to do business with, right? So, I mean, again, and when you look at, where the tenant market is headed today, you look at the demand segments that are growing, they attract a specific tenant profile. So if you know who that tenant profile is, and Russ, we spend hours and hours and hours of getting feedback from our management teams and our tenants and our owners, and understanding that tenant profile, but also understanding that tenant profile of, where they want to live, what they want in their floor plans and in their homes, and also what they can afford. It's a moving target. What we were selling 15 years ago is not what it makes sense today. It doesn't. It's pivoted, and it will continue to pivot. So you got to keep on top of that. But where I'm going with this is that if you understand who that target tenant profile is, again, we can easily reverse engineer the property type, the floor plan, the finishings, all, and putting the eye candy in the right spots that will really attract that tenant profile over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
More commonly, people do it the opposite. They go and find a property and then try and find a suitable tenant. And to me, I'm not saying that's wrong, but it just seems like you're trying to jam a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, well,
right?
think about this for a second. Is, gang, what we're doing is, if you're a real estate investor in buy and hold real estate, essentially you're buying a business in a box, in essence. If you are going out and analyzing a retail location to put up your 7-Eleven franchise, wouldn't you be doing demographics of foot traffic? Wouldn't you be doing demographics of people? Wouldn't you do population demographics? Wouldn't you do spending pattern habits? Wouldn't you look at how many other grocery stores and convenience stores around? You would start with the foot traffic and start with the people, and then you would start negotiating on the land, and then you start negotiating on the price points, and then you start looking at financials. It's beyond me why real estate investors don't treat it like a business, and they start at the opposite end of going, well, what's the price? Is it cheap? Can I get a deal? And then you eventually get down to it. Oh, who's the tenant person you're going to put in there? Well, that doesn't matter, right? But that's the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah, and Russ, the business in a box is a great analogy, and I think that's where my mindset is all the time, is looking at this like a business and actually breaking it down. For those business owners out there, when you're looking at your financial statements, you have the income statement side and you have the balance sheet side. Buying the property is actually, to me, it's on the balance sheet side. It's an asset, right? This will, it's got long-term debt tied to it, and then all of a sudden, you buy the property, and then you close on it. And then this is where the operational side of the business kicks in, and this is where really the rubber hits the road. And that operational side, Russ, if you don't understand that up front, you're not able to manage it airtight for your term of ownership. The business is going to fail, or it's going to falter, and it's not going to give you what you want out of it. You don't go, McDonald's doesn't come and build and just put up a restaurant for shits and giggles in any location. They're doing, like you said, they're doing studies of where their customer is. They understand who their customer is. They've catered their menu. They've catered their service. Even what the people say when you walk up to the counter is just completely catered to that experience. We need to take that and put that into, what we do. And it's not difficult, people. It's not difficult. Yep. Again, you just got to do it in the right order.
Yeah. And it 100% comes down to and you and I can probably, because we've been doing this for 20 years, we legitimately could sit there if you had two people, Joan and Jane, that bought the exact same property in the exact same complex at the exact same time for the exact same price. Joan and Jane, okay? Joan over here didn't manage the property very well, and they didn't care about the operation side, and they didn't run a tight ship, and they put bad tenants in it and all of a sudden like that. But Jane over here ran a tight ship, and all of a sudden the values of the property start going like this. They start getting a gap until a point where Joan sits there and goes, I can't afford this property anymore. It's costing me so much money, and they have to sell it for probably a loss. Where on the other hand, the one Jane, who operated this property like a tight ship, they're going to be able to weather the storms. And then in 15 years time from now, even though they weathered ups and downs and values went up and down, their mortgage balance is probably next to nothing, and they're able to sell it for a profit. So two people, exact same scenario, exact same properties in the same area, same price. The difference comes down to the operations over time.
So, Russ, just to build off that a little bit more, as we alluded to earlier, again, those three big variables, the the management cost, the repairs and maintenance, and the tenant turnover vacancy cost. Because every time a tenant's going to leave, it's going to cost you money. You're going to have to go in and clean it up, maybe make a repair or two, rescreen tenant application, show it, and sit on a vacant suite for a month or two. So it's going to cost you a couple $1,000. That couple $1,000 is going to have to be supported from somewhere. And if you're not making cash flow, you're going to have to support it as an investor. Now, our mandate is really to allow us to make cash flow as investors and take that cash flow and put it to good use, either by contributing to mortgage principal reduction on current assets or buying more assets with it. That's a way better use of capital. And your story about, I think, Joan and Jane or whoever we're talking about here, I have been in complexes with people and in having homes literally down the block from one another, running an airtight ship. And I know for a fact we've been renting our properties $100 or $200 more per month because we have and take care of it, and have maintained it, or we, have, great tenants in there that stay long term.
Yep.
And again, attracting that bad tenant profile, or a profile that maybe stays shorter term, or one that isn't going to value it as their home. When they leave, it's kind of left in that same condition, and then you have to put more money at it. Versus having a really good tenant profile that they're staying in there 3, 4, 5 years. It just makes your whole management cycle during your term of ownership very regulated and very consistent performance.
Yeah. And to be what you've done over the past, let's call it 10 years, is you've actually taken that the next step forward, is that you don't recommend people to go buy in bad areas with bad tenant profiles and just weather the storm and manage it and get through it and, just kind of limp along and struggle along. You've actually taken it the next step is, okay, let's find the best tenant profiles and let's match a new house to it in an area that will fit them. And you actually remove a lot of that struggle. Like, don't get me wrong, there's going to be challenges and there's going to be problems, but through the design process, you actually can eliminate a lot of those struggles and challenges for people, can you not?
Yes. The short, solid answer is yes, because just think of it, and I'm going to reference the Ford F150. They cater to a very specific customer. Okay, that might be Ford's highest producing vehicle, as far as sales, because it attracts a specific customer. What we've done is the same thing. Is we understand who that tenant profile is, and what we do is we have properties in constant procurement that are attracting that specific tenant profile. And all we do every year is just make it a little bit better, and follow that trend, because like I said, that trend does move. And there's also other things like municipal bylaw changes and relaxations that actually allow us to maybe innovate those designs and plans and make them better too. But really, it's just rinse and repeat. It's just, you've got a business process, and we just employ that time and time again. Now, what does that do for us as investors? Russ, it takes the guesswork out of it, because when I put a pro forma in front of you, we've literally got dozens, literally probably hundreds of these properties deployed into the marketplace. We know who our tenant is. We know what we're renting them for. And again, all that feedback has been implemented into these properties. So again, just takes the guesswork out of trying to find a property and then trying to find a tenant. No, it's, again, understanding who our customer is and doing the opposite, but just being able to do it in, mass volume. So again, it creates a competitive advantage for our investors, because we're buying we're getting discounts and good product, good solid product with a proven track record.
Yeah. And there'll always be ups and downs. There will always be challenges, but there's a lot of that you can help mitigate in the design process in advance with a little bit of planning. And that's really what your specialty is. Now, at the same time, everybody who sits there going, but Jay, I want a deal. I need this to be the cheapest possible. I need this to be at the deal. But in order to do that planning and to have all those extra attention to detail of things to have a long-term smooth ownership experience, sometimes there is a little bit of a cost at that. There's a little bit of a fine line, and there's a balancing act in there, if you will, right?
Well, and I think that just starts with giving people the right information, Russ. And that's really step one. Like I said earlier, is understanding what you're trying to achieve with this. Because if I think you're on to the wrong path, perhaps I will challenge that, your thinking. Hey, you told me this, but you're asking for this. It's just not quite lining up, right? So we just need to understand why. Yep. And at the end of the day, that's what a relationship is all about. I mean, people are entrusting us to, find them the right assets that will set their property management team up for success and regulate that long-term ownership. Because like I said, the real estate is just the vehicle that we're using to get to a future financial state. And we're trying to do that and make sure people get what they want from it financially, but we're also trying to do it and make sure that we either don't disrupt their current lifestyle and give them a property that's going to cause them a headache. Real estate is hands-on, but it can be pretty minimal hands-on if we do this right.
Yeah, 100%. And here's the thing, is I have conversations with investors all day long, whether they want to invest alongside me, or they need some coaching and support, or they want to, invest into a project at the same time. everybody always comes back and say, well, I want a deal. I want a good deal. And then I always will ask the question is, okay, what does that mean? What does a good deal mean to you? And usually when a lot of people always say, well, I just want the cheapest price and I just want this kind of stuff. I get that. I'm not the person for them, if you will. Most people will come to a point where what they're really talking about is they want good value. They want a good value in a property. They want to know that the price that they're paying is they're getting a phenomenal value of a property that they're buying, as opposed to a good deal. So that's just kind of something that I hear all the time. Is that something you experience as well?
Well, I think value is probably the key word that I use is, again, do you want a good deal or do you want a solid retirement plan? Because the two might not actually, communicate with one another. But yeah, the one's inherent value of an asset, and again, whether that be a piece of real estate or a stock or bond, you're putting money into it. You should have very clear expectations of what you're trying to get out of it. And again, that's something that I see a lot of people not being clear with, Russ, of what they're trying to get out of this investment. They're just trying to make money. And I understand that we're all trying to make money. But like I say that, if you can boil it down and understand if you want that money in next year, the year after, or 15 years down the road, it's going to make a difference of what you buy, right?
Yep. Price is what you pay, value is what you get. And I know,
right, and the financing and everything, it's going to make a difference of that whole plan.
Yeah, and at this time of year, it's every year it just the spotlight gets larger and larger for me. I sit there and I look at my portfolio and I look at properties that were bought based upon cheap areas, bad tenant profiles versus good tenant profiles in good areas, brand new construction housing, and the black and white numbers just speak for themselves, number one. But if I actually really look at it on which ones were the biggest stress, pains in the ass, pardon my language, and the ones that probably took my most time, it was all of the ones that were not intentionally purchased. It was not the new construction. It was not the good tenant profiles that matched in the right area with the right properties. It's night and day difference. And every year, especially during year-end season of putting statements together, it just shines a spotlight even brighter each and every year.
Yeah. Yes, it makes a difference. It 100% makes a difference.
Yeah. Now, Jay, okay, so I'm going to wrap this up here fairly quick here. And I know you're a busy guy and there's lots of things on the go. But if someone came to you, and I know we went in depth into this a little bit more, but if someone came to you right now and they said, Jay, with your 25 years of experience and that giant, brain of knowledge and everything that you got on the top of your shoulders, should I buy now or should I wait? What would be your succinct answer to that person?
Well, I think really it depends. And let me give a little bit context. I'm not trying to avoid the question. If it's me, I'm buying now because my risk tolerance is a little bit, I can absorb some negative cash flow if I need. To me, the acquisition price and getting rolling on mortgage principal reduction is more important to me today. Now, that's not for everybody, right? If your risk tolerance is, you want to make sure that the property can support itself, maybe you do need to wait a little bit, and let things kind of stabilize a bit. But I think that is an individual answer for everyone, Russ. And I think the beauty of new construction of what we do is we've got right now over 50 properties in procurement at various stages of construction, and some of them are literally, 10, 12, 15 months out. We can lock in our price today, with a minimal deposit and, really let the market do its thing. And you close on this thing next year and, you're kind of getting the best of both worlds there. But, again, it's taking that first step. And I think to take that first step is we just got to connect with people and really lay the black and white out for them that if you're looking and your budget is $100,000 or $200,000, and we determine that this is the best property type, let's actually look at that number and say, okay, here's the potential negative cash flow with that property. And here's the potential upside to it. And then you've got the information that you need to make a good decision for you and your family.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. So great answer. And Jay, you should be a politician, by the way, my friend. But okay, here's a direct question, and you already answered it, and I'm just going to drive the point home. As a veteran real estate investor of 25 years, are you buying properties right now?
Yes.
And I answer with the exact same yes myself. I think right now is a fantastic time to get back in the market and buy more properties. And I'm having the same conversation with veteran savvy investors in that 20 plus year range. And every single one of them are telling me the exact same thing too. So you do what you need to do for you, but sometimes maybe you need to follow the veteran savvy people that have been through the wars and find out what they're doing for themselves.
I think so. There's so much to it, Russ, like I say, with personal circumstance and being able to support if you can. And if you can't, listen, I understand. And if it's just outside of your comfort zone, I get it. We're looking to real estate investing, is again, about making money. Really, let's just cut to the chase. We're trying to make money with this. We're not trying to support it or, give ourselves something to do. We're trying to make money, and how we can make the biggest, ROI is, I think, buying at a time where you can save on acquisition price. Yes, cash flow is a little tight right now, but the properties we're going to put in front of you are going to be, airtight as far as being able to run your management, the repair and maintenance. They're going to be brand new, so for the most part, we do get some resale properties, but when you're buying a new property that has, 10 years prorated warranty to it, they attract tenants. I tell you, tenants love these things, guys. When we put these properties on the front lines for rent, everyone loves a new house, man. They just smell good. They look good. It's just, the tenants want them. So again, having tenants at maximum rental values is an absolute key component to a successful real estate investment, period.
Yeah. And I'm going to give you a little bit of props here for a second. One of the things I like about working with you is you'll tell me the truth, and you'll tell your clients the truth. You'll not sugarcoat it. And there could be easily somebody could sit there and juice up a pro forma and say, oh, look, it's positive cash flow. Everything's wonderful. And then when you own it and you buy it and you go, well, that wasn't true, right? But I'd much rather have you tell me the truth than here's what the way numbers are going to look. Here's the plan for the next 2 years. Here's the plan. You have to normalize it for 2 years. But the reason why you're normalizing it is because you're picking it up at a cheaper price today. It's just like savvy investors who maybe buy like a multifamily property. On day one, it doesn't cash flow, right? The reason why it doesn't cash flow is because you're picking up at a good price. And then over a period of time, you're normalizing the rent, you're getting expenses down, you're getting the cash flow up. So why not apply that same savvy investing into maybe a single family property as well? But the point I'm trying to get to is I commend you. I love your intention and your attitude of just telling the truth. And there's no where you stand with you. I just wanted to give you that acknowledgement.
Thanks, Russ. I do appreciate that. And like I've said literally hundreds of times, to me, it's all about the relationship. I'm after relationships. The properties come and go. And if I was to bullshit you or anyone else every time I talk to them, what good would that do to the relationship? People are going to pick up on that instantly, and again, this isn't about me. This is about, an investor and their family of what they're trying to achieve. All I can do is sit here and maybe challenge their way of thinking, and maybe give them some information where they can make a really good decision and actually get what they want out of it versus being sold something. Yeah. There's no selling involved. It's really putting an asset into your family that's going to give you what you want a few years down the road. End of story. It's just that simple. And it just starts really, Russ, with a phone call, period of getting to learn and understand. And, I ask people to be a little bit patient with us through that process, because that's really what we're trying to do, is just get an understanding of where they're headed. And once we have that understanding, I am humbly confident in our ability to place assets into them that are going to work for them.
Yeah. And it's not a recommendation based upon trying to sell something. It's a recommendation based upon, here's all the mistakes I've made. Here's the pain and, challenges I've made. Here's how they've been solved. And if you actually go this route, you will solve a lot of those mistakes. Now, you make the choice for you, if that makes sense for you. So how can somebody get a hold of you, Jay, if somebody is interested in having one of these consultations?
Well, I think the easiest, Russ, and I'm sure you've got a link in the video here right at the bottom where they can just link to. It's going to be an easy landing page. Folks, it's just a couple of questions on that landing page, of how we can connect. And really the first step is a phone call. No strings attached, like I say, is really, you need information at this point. I completely understand that. And it starts with getting you the right information. But honestly, it's not going to be a template information. You need specific information. Everyone's different. Everyone's got a different plan, and once we understand that, like I say, we can get that information to you that'll help you and your family make a great decision. Again, getting the property is the easy part. Our mind today is focused on your operational side of the business. When you hand the keys to your property manager, from years 1 to 15, this thing has to work. Again, respectfully, getting the property is really the easiest part. We've got the business process and gear for that. It's in motion. And you know what? There's lots out there to choose from. The deals are getting a little tight nowadays, just based on supply demand. But you know what? There's lots to go around. It's just really making sure we get you the right one.
Yep. Awesome. I 100% echo that as well. And as we sign off here, Jay, maybe I'm going to give you the last word here. So one of the things I always like to leave off kind of on episodes, you've been a part of this as well, is just if somebody's feeling a little bit stuck. Maybe right now they're sitting there and they're on these, and I'm holding up one of these fancy dancy mobile devices, and they're in the cesspool in the scroll hole of Twitters and Facebooks and all this kind of stuff, and they're seeing all this kind of stuff, and they're feeling just a little bit of fear. Maybe they're just feeling a little bit stuck. What advice would you give to somebody if you had a chance to have a coffee with somebody who's just feeling a little bit stuck right now?
I would say run your own race, stay in your own lane, because when you look at a lot of the events and everything going on, they're teaching a very generic way of engaging in real estate. And like I said, every family, every person, every investor has a different plan for their future. Okay. And again, real estate's just the vehicle. But once you understand that, stick in your lane, and it's hard today. I get it. The social media and news traveling around and going to the coffee shops and the band concert at school and talking with your neighbor. And they're like, oh my God, you see what's happening in the real estate market? You know what? Get the facts from a trusted source, get the real facts and just, cater a plan that works for you. And you know what? I guess the last advice on that is once you have all that, go with your gut feeling. I don't think you'll ever go wrong listening to your gut and your heart. And in order to get that proper gut and heart feeling, I think you need the right information put in front of you.
Wow. We couldn't have said it better myself. And I've been sleeping at the switch here, Jay. You've been just bringing fire and dropping bombs and all this kind of stuff. And I'm supposed to push these little buttons here, but I keep hitting the wrong button here. So hang on a sec, Gary. Dropping bombs, my friend, and bringing the fire.
All right.
And coming from a man, trust your gut. Sometimes your gut's a little bit different after you had some white spot, nice. What was the chicken and hash breakfast? Oh, that was good. How about the chicken and waffles? The chicken and waffles that we had too. That was good.
Chicken hash waffles with a beer and clam. I tell you, that's just a little bit of Alberta and BC mixed in one breakfast.
Yeah, I was surprised that Penticton was even to accommodate you, but Penticton's got a little bit of an Alberta redneck feel to it in many respects. So
it does. Yeah, a lot of Albertans living out there in the wintertime, I think.
Yep. Yeah, awesome. Well, Jay, fantastic. So once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for all your insights into this. And Jay and I Jay and I have, just bantering back and forth. We literally talk probably 3 times a week. And sometimes I always have to when we do these recordings, I always have to be careful that we're not telling inside things that just Jay and I know about, because we sometimes read each other's minds and thoughts. But the point I'm trying to make is we're going to make a commitment to bring out a little bit more regular content. And there was an event that happened over the past year, which I think maybe we'll share that in another episode of some of the pretty big lessons that you've learned over the past year. You've reinvented and redeveloped yourself in many respects, and sometimes it's forced upon us, and sometimes it's by design. But I think there's a really cool story there to share. Would you be open for that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this stage of life for me, I certainly don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon, but it's really, it's about sharing that message, Russ. And I guess, prompts back to you to allow me to share my experience, on your platform. I really appreciate it. And I know, and I hope that it creates value for people and gets people thinking.
Yep.
There is no right or wrong way. I think you got to do it your way. And again, that just starts with getting the right information and understanding it and flying into real estate investing and deals with your eyes wide open. Yep. The rest will work itself out. Now,
I've said it once. I'll say it again until the end of time. You are one of the best kept secrets in this game of real estate. And if the Lord willing, I'd love to share you a little bit more, because I think we need more Jason Matterns in this real estate investing space to just tell the truth, tell it the way it is, not try to sugarcoat something and sell something. And it's not always about rah. No, don't get us wrong. It's about let's go and let's be careful. But at the same time, here's some of the lessons I've learned along the way. So a lot more to come, my friend.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Right on. Hey, wait a minute. You're still here. Didn't you know the video is over? You know what? Since you stuck around right to the very end, it's time for a little reward, a little bonus for you. Number one, make sure you subscribe. There will be a button below here. Hit that subscribe button, bell notification to not miss an upcoming episode. And over here will be a hand-selected playlist and the next video for you to watch to keep your momentum going forward. All right, gang, let's go.